All right, beautiful. And so, yeah, the rest of this, what I want to do is I want to talk to you about negation. So, not gonna lie, negation works very strangely. And that's because negation is real easy if you're worried about the truth or falsity of sentences. But we're not doing that here. We're thinking purely, if you like, syntactically. And in that case, we cannot be concerned with truth values going in and getting flipped. We don't have that kind of tool in our belt here. So we're going to have to do something that's kind of weird. So the way I'm going to talk to you about negation is I'm first going to introduce you to this symbol. So this is a symbol that means contradiction. What exactly it means, we kind of don't really care. But the core of it is effectively P and not P. Or even harsher, crasser terms, you done fucked up. This is a bomb. Sometimes you want to get a bomb because we can do some fun things with it. That's a bad thing to say in the recording, but who cares? But this is going to be our tool. This contradiction symbol is something that's going to help us play around with negation. Because again, we do not have access, if you like, to truth and falsity. That's just beyond this language. It doesn't play around with valuations. That was the stuff we did with truth tables. So, let me introduce you first to negation introduction. Negation introduction goes like this. If you have a subproof that starts with some sentence and ends in a contradiction, then you can introduce one line to the left, negated the sentence you started with. Effectively, what the subproof shows you is that if A is true, bad stuff happens. So not A must be true. If A is true, you get so you don't want A to be true. So that's negation introduction. You have a subproof that starts with a sentence, ends in a contradiction, and that lets you introduce the negation of the opening sentence. If it's true, bad stuff, so it must not be true. So that's negation introduction. What's negation elimination? Well, negation elimination is how you get the bomb. Negation elimination is if you have a sentence and its negation, then you can eliminate the negation to set us up the bomb. Effectively, negation elimination is contradiction introduction. So notably, this kind of move is often going to happen inside a subproof. And it's going to happen inside a subproof, to go back a slide, so that you can do that. You basically set the bomb up and then go, cool, the thing I started with must not be true. If it were, then I could get the bad things. Okay. Yes?
But how can you get to negation A within a subproof if you don't have the other subproof with the contradiction in it?
Nice. So, notably, the sentences that we'll be using as assumptions, things that we'll derive, might already have negations in them. In which case, that's going to be where it's going to come from. So that would be one option. It'll kind of depend on the sentences you're playing around with. But importantly, right, if you can't get that already, well, then you're not going to be able to do this. So it's a big if, right? It's a big if you can get to this setup. Good question. Okay. So far, so good? So that's negation, introduction, and elimination. There's one more really, really weird rule here. It's my favorite rule. And it's explosion. Explosion is, from a contradiction, anything you want follows. If you have an upside down T, a bomb, blow it up, and anything you like follows. Chaos reigns. The reasoning here is kind of strange, but you can get a pithy version of it by thinking about it this way. If you're silly enough to believe a contradiction, you're silly enough to believe anything. Now, if I remember right, Michael talked to you about, way back in lecture 1, there was an argument about Mars's moons. And remember, that argument was valid kind of on the cheap, because the premises were jointly contradictory. They were inconsistent. That argument is an instance of this. The premises are contradictory, so anything you want can be the conclusion. If you're dumb enough to believe that Mars has exactly 2 and exactly 37 moons at the same time, cool, I got a bridge to sell you, baby. Again, harsh, but this is the kind of idea. These 3 rules come as a neat little package. Because one of the things you can do is start a subproof with a sentence, build up to a bomb, get a negation, or build up to the bomb and then get whatever you want out of it. Sometimes it'll look a little bit weird, but it's a handy way to go. This is an incredibly powerful tool. Okay. So, one last kind of big rule to mention is a fun one. It's called tertium non datur if you're being fancy, or no third way if you're being slightly less fancy. And it's a really simple rule. It's basically, hey, if some result follows from A, and the same result follows from not A, then the result's got to be true. That is, if you have a subproof that starts with A and gets you to B, and you have a subproof that starts with not A and it gets you to B, it's an instance of disjunction elimination, just without ever appealing to the disjunction of A or not A. Because if you like, that's sort of lurking in the background all the time. Okay, so we've done introduction elimination for all 5 of the connectives. We did explosion, we did T and D. That's all the rules. That's all the rules. Now you guys can construct any T and D proof. I'm sure you all feel like perfect experts, right? You guys are perfect at this board game now. Using these rules, we can construct any CFL argument that's valid. We can now show how an idealized reasoner would start from some assumptions and get to some conclusion. And you can specify how they would do it, step by step by step by step, using the specific, very detailed, very careful rules. And this is really handy. This kind of comes back to what we were talking about at the top, which Matt asked about, right? Now we have a better tool in some sense. Before, all we could do is show that an argument was valid or invalid. Now we know why it's going to be valid, how you can get there from here. Okay. That's the big lesson that I wanted to get through today. I wanted to teach you or show you all the rules. And again, I know that's a lot. It's fine. We're going to talk more about it in the tutorial. We're going to talk more about them again next week. Before we press on, I'm going to ask, how are people feeling with what we've covered? Are we overwhelmed? We feeling okay? Yeah. I mean, that's a sensible response. Tired. Amen. So I asked because, again, the last part that I want to talk to you about here is basically derived rules. These are sort of, pro gamer moves that we can do to save ourselves some lives. Thank you. Thank you. Basically, these are going to be rules that, technically speaking, aren't really in the rule book, but they're shorthand for a complicated series of things. So they're ways to save us some steps. Please.
I wonder if it's, you say this is everything, with these rules we can derive everything. Is this a unique set? I mean, can you have another set of rules that also does the same? Or?
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
I wonder, I would have expected to rule something like if you have A or B, and you have not A, then B should be the case, right?
That is one
and
of our.
that should in this case be a derived rule.
That is a derived rule.
It looks much more simple than some of these rules.
So notably, in order to show that that works, you need to show that it follows from one of the introduction and elimination rules applied in appropriate ways. In this case, what it's going to do is it's going to follow from disjunction elimination. But to use it, we've got to show that it follows from those basic rules. In fact, I think that's the second one that we're going to cover here.
Okay.
But notably, this is not the only collection of rules we could have. In fact, we could get rid of some of these and still do just fine. We could get rid of biconditional elimination and introduction. We could just play around with conjunction introduction, conditional introduction elimination. Because remember, the biconditional just is a conjunction of the two conditionals. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
That's one sort of restricted one. There's a bunch. If we have time at the very end, we'll talk a little bit about expressive adequacy, which is this idea. We'll see. Okay. So let's talk about some derived rules. These are, again, just sort of shorthand things you can do that'll make your life a little easier. Don't stress if these don't click at all. The other ones, that's really all you really need. Here is the simplest rule. I mentioned the earlier one. The simplest rule is literally repeat yourself. You can reiterate if you want. So if you have derived or you have sentence A, you can use reiteration and get A again. That seems like a really stupid rule to have, but sometimes it's handy. I'll give you an instance in just a second. So, reiteration.
How do you derive this?
Huh?
How do you derive this?
Good. So we take A, and we do conjunction introduction citing A twice. Then we do conjunction elimination to get A. It is busy work, but it's there. And that's how we can do reiteration. It's basically one line instead of three. So, our next one. This is the line, this is the rule you were talking about. So let's show it. So first things first. Valid argument? Yeah, right? Michael definitely taught you through these, right? If you have A or B, and you know that B is false, well then A must be true. So let's show it. So we'd start the way we start every proof, writing down our premises, listing them. Right? Now, looking at what we've got, we want to get to A. So what rule do we think we're going to use to help us? What do we think we're going to start at line 3?
The negation?
Well, I like the idea. So note, right, if we're going to introduce any kind of operator, then that connective is going to be in the sentence we want to get. So since A is an atom, probably not going to be an introduction. It's going to be an elimination. But looking at what we've got for 1 and 2, what operator might we eliminate? I like that idea. I think this is kind of along the lines, but we'd have to kind of get B and not B, and we've got not B, but what's in the way of us getting B? Well, kind of, right? The disjunction, right? There's the disjunction 1. And of course, if we could get rid of the disjunction, we'd already have A. Does everybody see, right? A is already there. So if we could get rid of that disjunction in line 1, we'd be money. So let's start with a disjunction elimination. Remember, disjunction elimination says, hey, if you can get to a result from one disjunct and you get to the exact same result from the other, then that result follows. Let's do a really silly one. Our first subproof, we're going to assume A. B in this case, sorry. This is why I should review the slides before I put the class. So we're going to start with B. And let's think. The result we want to get to needs to be the same one that we can get from A.
You have a contradiction. So the result can be anything.
Yeah! Do we see it? Do we see it? Right? So we can do, at line 4, we have B and not B. So what rule can we use right here? What rule can we use at line 4? You got it. Say it.
Well, I'm thinking contradiction, introduction, but we didn't cover that one.
We did.
Okay. Contradiction, introduction.
It's okay. So negation, elimination, and contradiction, introduction are the exact same rule. Bingo. Now we've set ourselves up the bomb. What are we going to do next? We heard it just a second ago. What do we do at line 5? Ooh, we blow it up. Explosion. We can get any sentence we want, any result we want. What result do we want at line 5? A. Cool. Are we done? Are we finished with the proof?
No, because the subproof is still open.
Subproof still open. What's next? What do we do at line 6? Tell me more. So what do you mean by just put A? It's okay. It's good. It's a good idea. So let's spool back. Remember, what were we doing this subproof for? What was this subproof helping us? Yeah.
Yeah, just conditional with A, because then in the case of A, well, not A.
I like the idea. Yeah.
Can we just open the next subgroup?
Yes.
For the disjunction elimination.
Exactly. Remember where we started, right? Let's go back. Again, we want to get to A. And we started by looking at the two sentences, 1 and 2. And we thought, all right, let's eliminate the disjunction in 1. And eliminating the disjunction in 1 requires 2 subproofs. We need to show that from one side you can get to a result, and from the other side you can get to the exact same place. We've shown how you can go from B to A. Now we got to show how to get from A to A. That's going to be real easy. So we're going to close this subproof. Yeah.
No, it's
Just confusing. Okay, it's okay. No, again, this is hard stuff, so don't worry if it's confusing. Yeah. We're going to close this one, and we're going to open our second one. Right? Good. So remember, what we're trying to do with disjunction elimination is you need to have 2 subproofs. One subproof is lines 3 to 5. Our next subproof is going to be lines 6 to wherever we end up. Keep going in? Because the result we want needs to be on that line. It does, because whatever conclusion we want to get needs to be on that proof line. Rules only let us beyond say one side. If you wanted to get some result in this subproof line, again, every rule that lets you be on site moves to the left. Only one step. Okay. So again, we want this subproof. This subproof needs to end in the exact same result as the previous subproof. So, what sentence can we derive at line 7?
A.
We want to get A. And what rule can we use?
Reiteration.
Yeah! We're a big brain move there. Big brain move. So now, looking at our two subproofs, they show us that if we start with the left-hand disjunct, so that's this one, we start with the left-hand disjunct, we can get to A. And the other subproof shows if we start with the right-hand disjunct, you also get to A. So what can we get at line 8? We can get A. And what's the rule that we'll use at line 8?
Disjunction elimination.
Disjunction elimination. We have used the disjunction in sentence 1. We've shown no matter which option you take, you get to the same result. So the result follows from the disjunction. So we get this. A, disjunction elimination, the disjunction we're using, sentence 1, and the two subproofs to get us to the result. Okay. So this is a handy example because one of the things that drives home is a couple little things about the result. Right? If your result's an atom, you ain't gonna be doing any introduction rules. Introduction rules give you complex sentences. Atoms are simple, so it's always going to be some kind of elimination. The other thing to think about is look at the sentences you start with. What connectives do they have? What tools do you have that lets you manipulate those connectives? Good. Okay. Now, notably, what this also shows us is that we can do a very simple derived rule. If you have a disjunction and the negation of one of the disjuncts, then you can derive the other disjunct. So we don't have to do this every time. We can just do this. If you have A or B and the negation of one of the disjuncts, you can get the other one. And here all you do, you cite the disjunction and the negation of one of the disjuncts.
Is it a bit awkward that you have to use the contradiction rule to get to that result? That feels very strange.
It is very strange. It sets up some really interesting things. So one of the weakenings of this system is you drop explosion. And it will then turn out that a lot of things that are intuitive reasoning-wise don't follow. So that weird kind of freaky valid on the cheap thing turns out to be really significant. We couldn't get this if we didn't have explosion. We didn't have the bomb, we could not do this, which is weird, because this seems really obvious. I mean, this is the kind of reasoning that, like, my dog does all the time. So, okay. So again, so far so good. I'm going to throw a few more at you. These ones aren't super duper amazing, but they're just handy to know. Another one that we have, this is something you've done before. This is called modus tollens. Modus tollens says if you have a conditional and the negation of the consequence, that is the negation of the second part, then you know the negation of the first part. To put in truth terms, if you know a conditional is true and you know the second part's false, then the first part has to be false too. Again, makes sense because if A were true, then the conditional would have to be false. Okay. Okay. Another very simple rule, this one's handy. We can do double negation elimination. If you have not, cool, just erase the two and get down to the base sentence. Note that this works if you have a ton of negations. So if you have like 8 negations in a row, you just apply it 4 times and you're down to the base sentence. Makes sense, right? Because if we think of negation as a flipper, if you feed in true, it takes it to false, and then it takes it to true again. Or if you feed in true, it takes it to false and it takes it to true again. It doesn't matter. Okay. The last pair of rules are ones that are kind of familiar. You probably already did these as truth tables. And it's just that there are certain pairs of sentences that are logically equivalent. If you have not both, as in over here, right? Not both, then you know at least one's let you down. If you have not both, then at least one's let you down. Similarly, if at least one lets you down, then you know they're not both going to be there. And you can probably guess what the other pair is. The other pair are the two ways to do neither nor. So again, if you have not both, you can De Morgan it to this disjunction of negations, or vice versa. And the last rule, just to mention, is if you have a negated disjunction, you can flip it into a conjunction of two negations, or vice versa. Again, Michael probably drilled these into you. The two ways to do neither nor are equivalent. That's it. That's all. That's everything that we're going to do. I know. Don't worry.
No, sorry.
It's okay. I'm the one who should be apologizing.
Yeah.
But again, so let me stress some things, right? I know that this is a lot, and it is. It is. But having done this quite a few times, I think it works better to just have all the rules up front and then we slowly work through them together. Rather than trying to drip feed, because what happens if you drip feed is basically you get confused as we move along. Easier to just be up front with it, have it all, and see how it goes.
What's the difference between for and
Good. So it's basically just whether you start with the negated disjunction or you start with a conjunction of two negations. So note the main operators here. In our left-hand side, the main operator is the negation. And over here, it's the conjunction.
Yeah, I thought for and two. So
Yeah. We'll go back.
But I get it.
Yeah. It's again, at this point, there's just so many things that have been thrown at you. It's kind of, oh my god, what is this? It's a soup. I get it. So, to stress, there's a lot of rules here. There is a lot of rules. But what I wanted to do was give you all of them now. We're going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about them in the tutorial on Thursday. In particular, as I said at the top, we're going to do two things in the tutorial. First, we're going to have the exam inspection. That'll take 10-15 minutes at most. And then we're going to talk through these questions. Now, it's worth noting the way these are kind of distributed. The stuff on pages 123 and 124, exercises A and B are kind of, they've started the proofs and it's filling in the rules or saying what's gone wrong. It's worth it just that if you have time, briefly look at these before Thursday. Because what I'd like to do is dive straight into building our own proofs right off the bat. It's the best way to learn this stuff. But again, don't stress, don't freak out. This is fun. This is fun. It actually really is, I promise. It's basically like one of the coolest fucking board games you'll ever get to play. So that's what I wanted to cover today. Okay? Again, I know we went fast. I know it's a lot. If you're struggling, that's cool. Go back, read over the chapter again. Feel free to hit me with an email or message me on Canvas. Happy to help. We're going to talk about this stuff on Thursday. But yeah, until then, have a lovely rest of the week, and I'll see you guys Thursday afternoon. Okay, then I'll check and see and upload it if it's not.